Hey guys, this is White Manga here with a new video. I know it's been a while, but I'm here to say, teach you guys how to achieve that anime look or that anime style. For this video, we're going to use one of my illustrations for an example, something I try to achieve that style at least to a degree, and you guys can learn from it. This video is going to be very basic in the sense that I'm not going to go into much details. I already expect you to maybe understand a thing or two about layers in using digital software, digital coloring software like Photoshop or Manga Studio or Clip Studio or Paint Tool Sire, things like that. So I expect you to have some knowledge, and if you do, it'll make it really easier for you to follow this video. And I have two videos, one on toning a manga page and one on just coloring a character and just putting in colors the way I do it. I'll leave links to those two videos that you can go check out, and it will probably help you understand this particular video a whole lot better. Mind you, if you know the little basic things here and there, then you would be able to take the techniques I use here to any other software. Here I'm using Manga Studio, but you should be able to do the same thing or even achieve better images with maybe Photoshop or Paint Tool Sire or something. But for this video, I'm going to use Manga Studio just to show you can use almost anything you want. So yeah, if you know the basics, they'll make this video a whole lot easier. For the most part, for those who follow me, you know that these are my characters, and these are from my comic/manga called Apple Black. You can read the first 3 chapters free. Well, the first 4 chapters free online, and I'll leave a link to that. It's on Saturday AM, and I'll leave the links on what Saturday AM is and everything like that. It's basically a digital bi-weekly magazine that you guys can go check out. Again, there'll be links to everything below. So let's hop into this video. So here we have Manga Studio, and everything is just transparent. Usually when you see all these boxes, just know that it's that's what it is. It's transparent, and it's nothing going on. So there, I just made the layer at the most bottom visible, and it's just the paper layer it's already there by default, and it's usually just white, but you can draw on it and edit it however you like. And here we already have all the layers I want already created. Mind you, I've already done this drawing, so we're just going to breeze through things. I'm going to try and make this as simple as possible for you guys. This is the sketch layer, and I just made, you can see it's locked, and it's a lock layer because I don't want to edit that. That's just, it stays where it is. I don't want to change that or edit that a lot. But I use this sketch layer to create the line art. The line art is what we're going to use to go forward. Basically, just the line art of the characters. I'll still use this sketch layer to create the backgrounds, but we'll get into that later. So right now, I'm just making the sketch layer invisible for you guys to see. I'm going to start off simple in this video before we get into the crazier stuff. Usually the basic things, for making, like an anime illustration that has been cell shaded, because that's the style, that's the name of the style of coloring that animes use. And usually once you do cell shading and you have some kind of blur or effect for the drawing, it usually achieves that anime look. So we're just going to go step by step in this video and see how I do it. Well, keep in mind that there's so many ways to do this. I'm just going to show you guys how I do it, and the way I do it, you can see that I try to make the lines. First, I use maybe either a pencil or the pen tool, and every software has theirs, but I use the pen for Manga Studio, and I try to make the lines as thin as possible. The closer the character, the thicker the line, but in general, the lines are pretty thin overall. And that's how, if I was going to make an anime or anything like that, that's the line weight I'll use. But as you can see, you can go check out other animes, and it varies. Like for Attack on Titan, the line arts can be a little thick at times, and same with like every anime has their style of doing things. But so the look I mean when I'm saying trying to achieve that anime look is just something that looks like it's out of a it's like a screenshot from a TV show or something like that. but keep in mind there's so many ways to achieve that. So this is just one of the ways, the way I think, just my ways of doing things. And for putting in the colors, again, I have a video for coloring, and I'll leave a link to that. So here I'm just making visible all the colors that that are on the characters. If you watch that video, you already know that usually the closer the color, I like to keep it on one layer. And I'm just making everything visible now. There's so many ways to actually put in the colors, and I have a video on that again, so you can check that out. Here I'm just making the colors visible, so I made the skin colors for everybody. It's all on the same layer. But usually the more layers, the easier it is to maneuver and change things. But here I kind of know what I'm doing to a degree, so I don't need that many layers. And again, the more layers, the more memory. Here you can see that with the yellows, especially on Mikhail's shirts, by the way, from characters from left to right, that's Sano, Weeworth, Mikhail, and Osama. So on Mikhail, you can see the yellows there, and it looks a little messy, but by the time I put in the blacks, it's all going to be fine, because you see the black, the layer that has most of the blacks are above the yellows, and you see that in a second. So I just made the reds visible. Now I'm going to make the blacks visible. As you can see, the blacks went over the yellows. So even though the yellow is still messy behind the blacks, you can still, it still looks fine. Again, we're not animating this, where this is just a flat drawing, so we don't have to do everything by the book. Usually if you're working with a bunch of people and it's going to be animated, a lot of things are done differently. But this is just a flat illustration drawing that's just supposed to mimic that of an anime look. Again, still putting in all the colors. This is white, and I made the back transparent so you can see the difference. That's the white, and the white's not like pure white. There's a way, I still give it some kind of dark shade to just differentiate it, to be able to differentiate from, this white and say the white of just the pure white of, say, the paper that was at the bottom layer. That's just the paper layer. And I use the same white for everything. It's the same. I put all the whites on the same layers, just to make things easy for me. Again, there's so many ways to do it. This is just my approach. Here are the shadows. Now I'm going to go into more detail with the shadows and why I chose this particular color, and it has to do with the background and where the characters are placed. For the most part, that's it, but as the video goes on, I'll go into more detail as to why I made that decision and chose this color. Usually the colors of the shadows vary and depend on where the character is. It has to do with lighting, it has to do with, highlights and all that. And I'm just going to make everything invisible, all the other colors invisible in a sec, just to show you guys how the shadows look alone. And it's basically, I just pick a light source, and with the background, when I show you guys the background, you see the light source and why the shading is done in this way. And again, in my style, I don't have too much shading. This is, the cell shading where you have just one. And you can see that another thing I want you guys to keep in mind is when you look at the layers, look at their opacity and what kind of layer there are. Most of the layers we've come across so far are normal layers, but this, for the shadow layer, is a linear burn. And to change that, you see normal and you change, go to multiply, color burn, linear burn. That's the one I use. And the opacity is usually somewhere in the middle. Now, the more the more transparent it is, that just shows, the less shadow, just how powerful the shadow is. So it depends on how much light is being, how much light is on them. So if there's a lot, if the light's so bright that maybe they're almost white, and the light overcomes their actual colors and just leaves like a really dark shadow behind. And again, the shadow, how dark it is depends on how bright the light is, or how close they are to the light, and also depends on a couple things, where they are as well. But for the most part, just bear with me for the video so we can just move on and not waste too much time on it. So here I'm putting everything back. Again, I left, well, I'll get to that in a second. So I'm putting in back all the colors. Again, this is already done. I'm just making them visible. And as you can see, these are how the characters look. And you can see the shadows. It kind of, it works, but it doesn't work in a way. It makes it look it looks a little weird, but we'll see. As you see for the highlights, there's you can see the highlights on Osamu's shoulder and Mikhail's shoulder. So the light source is going to be coming from behind them, and it's not going to overcome them too much because they're far away from it. So it's just going to be a little highlight on your shoulders and maybe part of their hair, and it'll be a little more self-explanatory when I actually show the backgrounds and where the light source is actually coming from, and everything's gonna look, how it's supposed to. But the shadows, like I said, it works, but you'll see I'll do a little thing that'll make it, work even more, and it'll also have to do with where the characters are. And that is a tone layer that I did. Again, it's also a linear burn layer, but I haven't turned it on yet. There it is. Now this already tells you that the characters are in a dark yellowy place, and what this is just a basic layer, just simple color that I went over everybody with, like all the characters with, and I went over the whole thing, even over the spaces for the shadows. The only spaces I left was the space for the highlights, right? And because the highlights are going to occupy that space, so I'm going to make everything invisible again, just for you guys to see. And I left the shadows back on, and you can see the highlight. There's a space for the highlights on Samu's shoulder and Mikhail's shoulder and stuff like that, and that's I just put on the highlights. And usually you can name your layers to whatever you want. I just put names that I know. Once I look at it, I know what it is. So I turned it. We're gonna turn it back off because it's all gonna make more sense once all the layers are visible. Again, keep in mind of what kind of layer they are, the opacity, and the name, and just where they're placed as well, because it also matters which layer is above which. And now I'll go into more detail with that later. But again, if you know a little bit about layers, then you should be fine for the most part. Again, there's so many ways to do this. This is just my way. Now I'm turning back all the colors. I'm turning on all the colors again. And these are just the basic colors, just the flats, just the basic flats. Nothing too fancy about them. They will be touched maybe later on, but this is just how it looks, and it's not going to fit the actual background the way they are. So before I talk a little more about that, let's actually hop into the background a bit. So here again, I think I have the white layer on, so I'm just going to turn that off. Here is just for the most part, the background is just one layer. It's not even not too much time even spent on it, but just real quick, one layer. You can see the part at the top left, so just shows that there's going to be like light, and that's just me showing that okay, there's going to be light shone on like the ceiling and that part of the wall, and the wall itself is kind of green, but the light's so bright that it's overcoming the wall's actual color, and it's all on one layer. There's more to it than that, but I'll get to that. For the most part, people for maybe animes, they actually just paint the whole background, right? Then an animator will come in and put the characters, and the characters will be moving, and you won't have to worry about the back. But again, this is a flat illustration, so I'm not going to paint over the parts that I know that no one's going to see. I'm just going to focus on the parts that people are going to see, which is the wall and part of the stairs. And from the line arts and even from the sketch, I can tell that I can tell what part's going to show. Now this is a texture I put in for a wall, and again, it's going to be above. I put it above the shadow layer. I made sure so it was only visible on the ceiling, because I want the ceiling, the wall, and the stairs to have different textures. So I played with the texture a little bit. The texture is just a JPEG, and you import it like a layer, and I put it up there. I reduced the opacity, made it a linear burn, and I put it as a linear burn because they all have different effects. This is how it will look normal, and I didn't like how this. So basically, it's left for you to play around with. So I liked how it looked for a linear burn, so I chose a linear burn. And again, I made sure it only showed on the ceiling. So I erased where the texture is going to show on the other side. So the wall, that's the wall's texture. Again, just a layer, and I made sure all these textures were their own layer and they were above the background. Again, the linear burn, and I reduced the opacity a little bit, and I'll do the same thing for the stairs. Again, the texture is only going to show in the part where the stairs show, so I made sure, so I erased around the texture just to make sure it only covers the stairs. And I make it linear burn. I just made it. I just locked the layer just so I wouldn't mess with it at all. Usually you can lock whatever layers you want. Once you lock a layer, you can't play with it anymore unless you unlock it. Which is really easy. There's like a padlock icon somewhere. It's at the right, but there's one at the top of the whole layer dialog box. So that's that's basically it for the for the background. There is still something at the railing, so that's like to the left, closer to the bottom left, and that's a layer that I made different. Again, I used the sketch layer to know where things would be, know what parts would actually show and what parts wouldn't, and or you can just use the line art layer. It's up to you. But the railings layer, I haven't really, I'll turn that on in a sec to show you guys what I was talking about. But that's an extra layer. It's still part of the background, but it's not. I gave it a layer of its own, and you'll see it in a sec. So I'll go turn off the sketch layer, and that's the railings. It's just basically what you hold when you're walking down the stairs. And I haven't turned it on yet. That's just a paper layer. Again, usually you paint the whole thing, but for a flat drawing, I'm not gonna do all of that because I know people are not gonna see it anyways. So that was the railings layer. I just turned that on. So basically, I made a layer of zone, and basically I painted all of this in Manga Studio. I didn't even really give it too much give the painting too much detail. For the most part, the textures usually help with that if you want. And for the railings, I made sure that I also gave space for the railings to show. The texture on the wall doesn't go over the railings. I made sure I erased that spot so the railings and the wall texture wouldn't it won't just feel so flat. So the railings actually has no texture on that one. I just painted it and left it as is. So, but I erased the part of the texture that I know the railings was gonna show. That's just for the bulb. If you read Apple Black at all, I do use flowers for a lot of things. So that's like a flower that emits light. So in the world, they use these flowers to do certain things, and that's like a bulb. And that's just light from outside. So it's almost like two, the characters were walking down this tunnel kind of thing, and they were coming in from outside, and outside is pretty bright, almost like it's snowing outside, but it's not, but it's just really bright, and you can see part of that effect where what I use is just basic airbrush, nothing too fancy, and I just did the airbrush, made sure it went again, you have to keep in mind where these layers actually are, and you can see it's above the background layer, so you can really feel the effect of the light. So with the airbrush, basic white color, and I just went over it. Here, the light bulb, you can see even though it doesn't look alive. So I went in. Keep in mind, this is it's an add glow. I think the opacity is 100%. And I just picked a color that will really help that bulb come alive. So kind of like a bright yellow. You can see it on the bottom left, the whole color wheel thing at the bottom left of the screen, where you can see what color it actually is. At the end of the video, I'll do a little giveaway to where I'll give the original file of this drawing away, and I'll explain more and how you can get that. If you have Manga Studio, you can actually get this illustration and have it and play with it and understand what I'm doing a whole lot more if you have Manga Studio. So yeah, I just put on all the other colors. Again, I put the shadow on. Again, you can see that the shadow color, because of the light in the tunnel, kind of dictates what kind of shadow is going to take place, but it still doesn't look, you know, as good as it can. So when you turn on the tone, now they truly feel like they're walking down that tunnel, because the color I chose, I made sure it was something dark, but also gave off a yellow vibe as well. And you can look at the opacity there, I think it's 40%, and it's a linear burn, like I said. And where the layer is placed is actually placed above all the colors and all the line art and all the backgrounds and everything, because it went over it. I only left the space for highlights, because there's a color for highlights. Now the highlights are going to the highlights are an effect from the light from outside that's shining on their backs, but we're only going to see a little bit on their shoulders. So turn that on, you can see how, you know, it looks better. And it's a little thing there. Some people may not notice it, but it's those little things that kind of bring the drawing alive, bring the drawing to life. So there's a little highlight there on all the places that it should be. So part of the hair, the scarf, shoulder, Mikhail's shoulder, obviously part of Mikhail's hair, and a little part of Sano. Again, if you look closer, you will see all these things. So here we're playing around with the highlights of the hair. That's what I was switching on and off. Where the highlights, the color I chose to do the highlights, was also dictated by the actual light shining at the top left. And again, the light bulb shine is like the second layer to the second layer at the top. It's, you know, basically the same thing, just I use basic airbrush, and it's an add glow layer. You do some opacity there, and I did it above, you know, the layers above everything. So it's almost like it really gives that feel of, okay, you know, that you know, the bulb is really bright. And unlike the light behind them, the white light behind them from outside, you know, they're really far from it. Here they're really close to this one, so you can see that the light is actually shining above Sano's hair. You know, the layers above the colored, all the layers of color in Sano, or basically all of them, and it just gives, you know, a stronger vibe, because that's a realistic feel, because that's how it will look in real life. I mean, if there was a bulb like really close to my face, it will really affect the light. Now it doesn't work for the light at the back, because I did the same thing but only white. It doesn't work when you pull it up, because, you know, they're far from it. It doesn't make any sense. It's only going to give that highlight feel on their shoulders. It's not going to really, you know, change their actual colors, or you know mess with the characters too much, because they're far from that light source. But the light source at the top left, the bulb, is really bright. They're closer to it. It's kind of, you know, in front of them, not in front of them in a way, and it's so bright that it's above Sano's. It gives like an effect on Sano's hair and Sano's face, because he's the closest to it. But it also affects everybody there, and that's indicated with the shadows they're given. And because the place is dark and it's all yellowy, so it also dictates that tone layer that goes over everything, including the shadows and all the colors, to really make them feel like they're there. Now at the bottom, to really make it to indicate that, oh, the place where the tunnel is kind of dark, there's an extra layer I did. It's a multiply. It's also actually 100% opacity, but it's just a basic airbrush. You can do a gradient there, but I just did an airbrush, and it's just pure black, and I just made, you know, the bottom darker, you know, which was a contrast to the top of the drawing, where it's almost like the drawing from the top to bottom is going from light to dark. And that's just a logo for the magazine for Saturday AM, because this is actually the cover for Saturday AM's issue 3, and it contains the beginning of Apple Black Chapter 12. For those of you who know about Apple Black's volume, Volume 1 came out in December last year, and it has all chapters from 1 to 9. And I've been working on new chapters. A lot of stuff has been happening to me. I'll make a video discussing that and why production has been slow and things haven't been, perfect, but we're still moving, we're still alive, and I'll make a video explaining that later. The layer for the logo of Saturday AM, I made sure that that layer was in between the characters, like the layers that form the characters and the layers that form the background. So just so that the logo can be behind the characters, but at the same time in front of the background. It has this, it gives the drawing some more depth. So here, another thing you can do to make it feel more like an anime is to remove all the light shining and remove the background and just keep everything that touches the character, everything that forms the character, and maybe saving as a PNG and importing into Photoshop and using a filter and doing a blur filter, a Gaussian blur, something like that, and just by 2 points, nothing too much. Or some Manga Studio software they already have filters, so you can just it's at the top of your screen where it says filter. You can just click that, and my software is kind of weird, but usually you should have you click on that filter and the blurs will be there in Manga Studio, so you don't have to export anything. And just make sure that all the layers that you want to actually blur is selected. And you can also blur the backgrounds if you want. So it's basically what you do to this, where you single out just the characters. You can do the same thing where you single out just the background. Again, you don't necessarily want to blur the actual shining of the light. It depends on how you want to do it. Basically, if you understand what I was talking about with layers, then at this point you should know exactly what I'm talking about, and you can do whatever you want. Another way to do it would be to again make sure if you have a logo on the drawing, for whatever reason, usually you wouldn't, but you can just take the whole drawing and just add like a glow layer to it. It also makes it feel like you're looking at a TV screen. But for the most part, if you understood most of the stuff I've already said, then you know what I'm talking about. Here I've singled out all the backgrounds, and again you can blur just these. Select all of these and select your layers and just blur these, not by much again, just enough to where it looks like you're actually watching an anime. And I'll have an example of that in a second after, I turn on all the images, and we're going to see how everything looks when it's put together and all the important layers are switched on, are visible. And that's by clicking that little eye at the left of the layer box. And make sure the sketch layer is off. That's the only one you want to leave off. And voila, that's the anime look. I'll show you the anime look with when I add a little blur to it in just a second. Voila, oh no, I haven't really added the blur here, but we'll see it in a second. Oh no, that was it, we'll just see it closer later on. So here, just a quick recap. That was just a sketch layer, the line out layer, here's the background, and you see everything put together in a second. Boom, that's how it will look. The other one's just an example of how it will look, maybe if it were outside in a blue place. That's why you see the shadow colors there are different. But here, because they're in a very yellow dark place, the shadows are yellow dark, there's a tone that goes over all the characters, this yellow dark. The background is painted with that in mind, and everything's, now this is like a close-up, almost like a wide shot that I wanted to just close up to show you guys what I mean. And this is when the blur is being added to it. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. You can click and watch other videos. Click the videos I was talking about. They'll explain a little more about layers, about me toning a manga page, coloring anime characters with Manga Studio, And you can check out more stuff about Apple Black. All the links you could possibly need are below. Please like this video, share this video, and subscribe if you enjoyed it at all. And I'd like to know what animes you think have the best anime style, whether it's One Piece, Attack on Titan, Dragon Ball, Bleach, etc.